Well, good morning, everybody. As we watch the sunrise here in the middle part of the country, we can still see the ongoing convection that is down here in parts of the south and southeast. We had just a tremendous amount of severe weather this weekend throughout the southeast and the lower Mississippi River Valley, and this is just the very end of it right here. I'd like to take you back overnight and show you, though, what these storms look like just as the sun was setting here on Sunday evening. Some of the overshooting tops from these storms produced actually large gravity waves in this area, which just tells you the intensity of these storms. And we're right now moving our way as we start the month of April here later on this week. We're moving our way toward the most active next 3 months in terms of severe weather in the United States. And I also want to point out we had numerous storms that popped up in parts of Illinois, Indiana, right into this area too, with another weak low that was coming in this particular part of the country. Now, when we look back at this last week, we're still assessing the true damage that happened throughout parts of Mississippi especially. But if you kind of broaden the scope and look at the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation here, it's also important to note that some of these storms delivered up to 6 to 8 inches of rainfall. We had a lot of hail with these storms. And you can also see that stretching from the Red River Valley of the south through the Tennessee and Ohio Valley, this was an area right in through here that did pick up widespread. You can see the color bar over here, 3 to 6 inches of rainfall. Meanwhile, while all this was occurring, there was snow on the northern side of this that came into parts of Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin, and eventually into Michigan. Some of the snowfall totals in here from, again, this was at the end of last week, did get up over a foot. So there was a lot of, and we talked about this was going to be a difficult snowfall forecast. And a lot of that melted pretty quickly with some of the warmth we did see in the day on Saturday and Sunday. But when we just step back and look at what this pattern has given us, we want to ask, are we going to continue to see a pattern stay like this? Is there anything that's changing? We're going to address that in this video here in a few moments. I do want to point out that the National Weather Service out of Mississippi has done some preliminary storm surveys. And if you look here, you have the ranking on the EF scale, the location, the max winds, the length, the max width, and injuries and fatalities. And just one that I want to highlight here, the one that went through Rolling Fork. They've ranked it in EF4 with wind speeds of 170 miles an hour. It was on the ground for almost 60 miles. It was 3/4 of a mile wide. And as you know, we've seen numerous fatalities, not only from this storm system, but from others that went across Mississippi on Friday. Truly just a tragic event. It's hard to put into words when something like this happens. Difficult to express what you feel when you see something like this occur when it's been forecast for several days. Another way to think about this, I just put this in the report. This is just an illustration. This map over here is from FEMA, and it shows tornado risk by county across the United States. But I want to highlight some very important research that was done by Victor Cassini out of Northern Illinois University and Harold Brooks out of Oklahoma University. They published the results in the journal Nature, which I linked in the report today, about where they've seen the environments that are conducive to tornadic storms shifting over the last 40 plus years. And it just highlights that parts of the Mid-South down into the Southeast, in fact, the whole of the Mississippi and Ohio basin, has seen a pretty significant increase, which means we're seeing a bit of a shift east in Tornado Alley. And I just wanted to bring some of this research to light. Unfortunately, we are watching another storm system rip down across California in the next 3 days. And as it ejects later this week, the Storm Predictions Center already has a day 4 and day 5 outlook posted. So they're going to watch Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas on Thursday, and then a very large area here throughout the Mid-South and Midwest on Friday. So we just need to be aware that there's another system coming through. It looks like this. Let me take you back to Sunday's satellite imagery. It's this storm system here. It is just going to slide north to south. This is infrared now. This was sunset last night. It's going to slide north to south over the next few days, coming down here toward California. And the problem with this system is it's going to add a lot more snow into California. We have winter storm warnings that are out for much of Oregon and California, California's mountain ranges. There's freeze warnings out for parts of California's Central Valley. And there's going to be some very strong winds with this as well. We have a system that's still spinning here over Wyoming and Montana. There's a winter weather advisory that's out for parts of Colorado, Kansas, and Nebraska with red flag warnings to the south. And all of these kind of polygons you see here represent the flooding that's happening on the river systems that feed into the Ohio, Mississippi, Tennessee, the major rivers that eventually get into the Mississippi here. We still have a flood watch out and the remnants of a tornado watch here in parts of Georgia with this as well. Now, because we're going to be adding quite a bit more snow into the west, I just wanted to show you the latest data from NRCS. We're looking here at snow water equivalent. I link this in the report so you can click on it and zoom around and have a look. But what I want you to do is get a macro scale view of this. This is where we currently stand with snow water equivalent, and I just want to take you back a year ago to show you the difference. So it's a much different scenario going into spring in terms of reservoirs, in terms of the spring flood issues that will likely be happening. And with this next storm system that's coming through, take a look at what the European model is doing with total snow. So it's sliding down Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, and we're already just in the 72-hour forecast looking at another couple of feet of snow, maybe more than that in the Sierra Nevada. There's a system that follows this, and this is going to be one that's going to cause problems for the Midwestern United States and the Central United States midweek next week. And that system hits the West Coast on the weekend. So this coming in Saturday, Sunday. And it potentially has the ability to add a lot more snow to the Cascades, the Central Rockies, and the Sierra Nevada. So we're nowhere near done with this. If we just look at what the probability would be of 6 inches of snow in the next 10 days, as each of these systems slides down and then ejects here into the central United States, I want to point out that there's a corridor in through here where we could likely get more snow. And this is an area that is currently sitting under snow. The Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, some places in here have 2 inches to over a foot of liquid in that snow. But if we step this map up from 6 inches here to 12 inches and then 18 inches, we now can see that the models have a high probability forecast of at least 2 feet of snow in these areas. On the other side of this, a lot of rain coming to places that are very wet, and it's missing places that are very dry. So the probability of getting another inch of rain in the next 10 days is very high in the Ohio Valley down into the southeast, but this also carries into the Great Lakes in New England as well. One area that I'm very thankful to be seeing moisture return to is North Carolina. We've seen in North Carolina, Virginia, especially in the coastal regions, a drought beginning to emerge here. In fact, they showed up on the latest drought monitor that was released last Thursday. So to see the moisture coming through there this morning, and then what we're expecting here in the next 10 plus days is a good sign for this area. So let's go have a look at it. Here's that rain I just mentioned, and as we play through today, you're going to see the first low right here, midday Monday, coming out into parts of Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas. So it's going to curl up right there and deliver some snow into this region. It's moisture. It's good to see this moisture coming through. Now that low doesn't really do too much. There's still a lingering frontal boundary sitting right in through this area. So by Tuesday morning, we're going to watch more storms down here across parts of the Gulf Coast, hitting some of these areas that have been hit multiple times this weekend. While that's occurring, there's a little clipper that's bringing some snow into the Red River Valley of the north, but our next big low is still sitting offshore here, and its first main frontal boundary has moved in by Tuesday into Oregon and Northern California. And that low is going to continue to spin, producing snow throughout this entire region, with multiple bands of it coming in around the low that's just off the screen here in the high-res NAM model. So that gets us out here to the midday Wednesday. Do notice that the high pressure that's sinking in here has a front out ahead of it that spreads more snow throughout the Great Lakes states, and that sweeps through right there on Wednesday. All right. From here, let's flip over to our comparison between the GFS and the European model. European model's on the right. We've seen up until this point, so there's that front coming through on Wednesday, and there's the low we were just discussing on the West Coast. Now that low does eventually get wrapped up into a deeper trough over the west by Thursday night. And on Friday morning, we're going to see this eject, most likely somewhere here in Colorado, Kansas, and Nebraska. The European model is a bit more elongated feature here, but both models by Friday night are attempting to kind of light up this region here with severe storms. Now Thursday, again, we're keeping an eye here, but Friday we're going to watch this whole corridor for the risk of strong to severe storms. On the northwestern side of this, there's more snow coming to places that don't want any more snow. And you can see the next low is already starting to take shape on the west coast. So while this system moves into New England with a large open warm sector, meaning the snow will be in Ontario and Quebec, not into New England, the next storm system comes into the west. And I'm just going to play this out for us just so you can see that it's expected to eject in the middle part of the country again Sunday through Wednesday of next week. It's a very similar system in terms of its overall trajectory. Now, when will this pattern begin to break? Well, we noticed that all the way out there by April 6th. There's still ridging in Alaska, deep troughing over the west with southeast ridging. That's been the pattern we've been on. So this just sets up this corridor to be quite active. But as we play this forward, there is an important shift coming, maybe after about the 6th, 7th, and 8th. And if we just play this out there all the way to the 11th, do you see how there's troughing over Alaska? First time in a while. Cold air coming in here. That'll bump the jet stream pattern up downstream. See, there's a bit of ridging over the west. That could start to kick the cold air farther to the east, and that's an important signal. But until then, this whole pattern stays active. If you look here, this is the week 2 forecast from the CPC, the European model, and from the GFS. And they all three show a very similar pattern to where the wet weather is going to be. All right. Temperature-wise, this is the frost risk over the next 7 days. So everywhere in gray is where we do expect to have a temperature below freezing. If we flip that narrative over to the high temperatures, here's today's highs. We can play this through Tuesday and Wednesday. So very cold air anchored here in the northern plains and upper Midwest. The large warm sector opens on Thursday, hence the severe weather threat here. Presses east on Friday, broad open warm sector, strong contrast. This is just where this low is going to rip through, and that's why we see the severe weather setting up for late this week. Saturday, the temperatures sweep through much colder, and we go into April, first couple of days of April, looking something like this. Now, when does this pattern break? Well, let me just show you a 5-day sliding window of temperature anomalies through the next 15 days. You see a lot of this pattern. Warm in the southeast, mid-Atlantic to Texas, cold in the northern plains, Canadian prairie, and west. And it may not be until after we get past like the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, that time frame of April, before something begins to shift. I think the CPC picked up on it. I think they picked up on it earlier than some of the other models, because this is their forecast for April 8th through the 21st. Notice they've reduced the total area that's expected to be below average. Now they've got Alaska colder. This could start to break this pattern. And interestingly enough, wetter conditions in New Mexico. I mean, this is where drought is anchored here. So to see this is going to be important to watch if that verifies. The European model, we're going to wait to tonight to see the latest update, but not necessarily in perfect agreement. Lastly, I want to give you an international picture on precipitation here over the next 10 days. Europe, wet. Black Sea region, wet. Wet along the Yangtze River and south. Very wet throughout big areas of Australia. You know, they're going into fall. This is a time period of preparation for the winter crops. Very wet conditions now can be disruptive. But we see another 10 days of drier weather in Brazil, in Brazil. While we watched last week up to 10 inches of rain hit Argentina, there's still more storms coming to Argentina. After 4 months of drought, all this rain coming through is not helping. And then we'll watch to see if we can fill this back in with moisture, because if it doesn't, there's going to be some concern on the safrinha crop. So got a lot to be watching this week, and I just want to make sure you're all weather aware as we move through, because there's more snow coming and more risk of severe storms. So we'll talk each day, and I look forward to it. Thanks.